the screen visible?
Yes.
Okay, so this slide basically comprises of the feedbacks that we have received from the students, and based upon the feedbacks that we have received, we have tried to summarize the points that they have made in terms of the problems they were facing, and in terms of if something not working as per their expectations. So this is the presentation for that. Uh, yeah, so this is the summary of the problems faced, like ongoing after going through all of the feedbacks that we have received. What we could jot down is the following: that on the basis of feedback till 15th of September. So the first one is, and the most prominent is that SageMaker notebook was not starting, even waiting for a long time. This was faced by almost 90% of the person using this. So this is, I guess, the most prominent issue that the students were facing. Second thing that we have come into notice is that it takes a high time to start up. This is the second point. The third is some of the students also told that they weren't able to start up the notebook on the first go, but on the successive retries they were able to start up. So this is the third point, that it takes multiple retries to start up a notebook. Fourth one was that the refresh button that was present onto the website, that refresh button seems not to be responding and not interacting with the users' choices. And yeah, fifth point is that yeah, some student also contacted me through email, and also through the feedbacks that we have received, we got to know that there was some problems in the code submission and evaluation. Some argued that they had written the correct code, but the evaluation script were marking them relatively lower in what they basically expected. And for some students, the evaluation scripts were not working. Some were facing some sort of errors, or the evaluation scripts were failing. And yeah, and very few of the feedback which we got included the problem of not being able to authenticate with the verification mail. So these are the major problems that we have analyzed through the feedbacks and the email chains that we have got from the users and the students. So if there's anything else from these listed points, then the students may add up to this.
So requesting the students, does it summarize all the problems, or somebody has come up with something which is not listed here? So I think this pretty much summarizes. When was this, Gaurav is asking, when was this survey distributed to us? I think it was some 4 or 5 days back, right?
It was sent to you by mail. You may have missed it, I guess, but many of you have feel
So
like
Gaurav, it's okay. I mean, this if you have anything to add here, you can tell it right away. So Gaurav, do you have any other point to add here? Okay, so we may move on then.
Yeah, sure. So based upon the feedbacks that we have received, we have come up with an action plan and the resolution that we propose for these problems. So I'll go to those resolutions one by one. So yeah, the resolution proposed are as follows. The first one is like we will be revamping the current protocol to enable smoother user experience. What basically this means is like as of the current situation, the user comes onto the website, goes to particular course, and then it is expected from the user to click on refresh button and then click on refresh button again, something like that. So we'll be like totally revamping this current protocol and removing the user's intervention for multiple button clicks. The system will automatically know when the notebook has been started or has been stopped, and there would not be any need to click that refresh button. In fact, we will be trying to completely remove that refresh button, so that you just have to click on a single button to get your notebook started, and you will automatically get notified when the notebook is started, and you can directly then go on to that particular link to have your exercises done. Similarly, for stopping, you just need to click a stop button, and everything will be handled. Then you will get notified when the notebook has stopped and other things like that. So yeah, this is what the third point is: automating the notebook delivery system to the users. Currently, it expect some feedbacks from the users in terms of clicking several buttons, but we'll be trying to remove that completely. And yeah, fourth point is removing false positive from the user's experience. Yeah, this is something that I've got to know about from the students, that it appears onto the website as if the notebook is starting, and the user basically wait for 3 to 5 minutes, but in reality the notebook has even not started. So this is some sort of false positive message that is coming onto the user in a vague sense, and this results into confusion of the users. So we'll be removing this false positive from the user experience. Also, one of the main point is that we are in consistent talks with the AWS team for increasing the thresholds for the API. So this is some sort of infra issues and that
So
we are having with the app.
basically, if you allow me to interrupt a bit,
Yeah, sure.
so in AWS system, basically the how it works, Amazon is a big corporate, right? And there are a lot of AWS users, a lot of other corporates and companies and startups, even big companies are using AWS as their backend. So now there are AWS has various number of services. So we are using only part of them. Now in our use model, we are kind of using certain APIs which has a very low limit, low threshold limit. For example, uh, let's say some APIs we are calling, some APIs from AWS we are calling, let's say 1,000 times per second or per minute. Let's take it 1,000 times per second, and Amazon allows us to call at most let's say 200 calls per second. Now you clearly see there is a difference between the expectation from kind of expected bandwidth from Amazon versus what is provided as the consumer of AWS, how much we are provided with. So there are two ways to get out of this. One way is to kind of create an intermediate layer of waiting, some kind of queuing mechanism where we can actually make the user's request wait in a queue and be served by Amazon, but that will result in a slow experience by user, right? I mean, user will face the slowness because their request is put into queue for some time until the bandwidth is cleared off for next subsequent 200 messages, right? The second way is to request Amazon to increase this threshold, but this comes from their policy. It's not user dependent. For example, it's not our account has only 200 limit. An account which Netflix is using may also have 200 per user, but maybe Netflix is not using this API or of AWS, right? So that's where we stand now. So there is certain challenges where we have to request AWS to increase this thing, or else you have to keep a protocol so that user is made to wait. We are trying to see what best we can achieve with this, and is also it's a point of as per history, like AWS kind of revamps their policy, improves their policy based on user feedback. So as a user, there are so many users in our system now. Let's say almost 400 plus students in this course are using it, right? And then subsequently there will be other courses, and it is an open platform. It will be open to every academic institution and for general people also, right? So expected bandwidth will be pretty high. The requirement will be pretty high. So if this kind of a feedback goes to AWS team that there is a use model where these kind of APIs are being used at a very high bandwidth, is requires to be called like many times a second than what they provide, they will also improve their architecture. So that's how AWS works. They get feedback from the end users, and then they improve their system also to provide a better service to their customers. So it may take a little bit of time if Amazon goes that way. But anyway, we're trying to fill in the gap in between by kind of creating an intermediate architecture where we will basically kind of create some kind of a mechanism to make the user's request wait. But we're trying to give the best experience that we can give with the current limitations that the AWS system has. Yeah, Saurabh, you may.
Okay. So the next point is this is also one of the most discussed point and talk point that I've been receiving through emails, that the students are working on to their assignments and submitting, but they are not getting the expected accuracy or the expected response from the evaluation scripts. So what we'll try is, like, we'll try to make the evaluation scripts more agile and tolerant. Currently, for many of the questions is pretty much binary. So even if for say, if a particular question expects you to say, if you're making a prediction between a class labels of 0, 1, 2 for a number of 25 points, and for out of 25 points you get 20 points correct and 5 points wrong, but being binary, it will currently marking your answer, that particular answer is wrong. So this is the reason why I guess 2 or 3 students came to me and told me that, sir, we are getting the expected accuracy, but in some of the questions as the question demands for, but the answers are being marked as wrong. So this was the reason. So we'll try to make the evaluation scripts more agile and tolerant. And the last point that is part of our resolution.
So can you hold on a second, Saurabh, there?
Yes.
So on this point, the last point Saurabh discussed, so Adhoy and the TAs of this course also. So the subsequent assignments, we have to see how this experience, that the marking of the students and marking of the solutions, right? They are not just 0, 1, they can be kept something in between also. I mean, that depends on the kind of questions we are creating and how we are evaluating, right? So this is a feedback to the team who are creating questions also. Questions and the evaluation scripts also.
Yeah. And the last thing is about supporting the larger concurrent load onto the system. So for this, we are already making, already had made some efforts, and we'll try and make even more like things. So to handle a larger load, things such as delay in getting the response in the front end, or the website slowness that some of you would have experienced would also go. So this is gist of this resolution that we are proposing based upon the problem and summary that we have gathered from the users. Yeah.
So one more point, there are a couple more points from Shivam and Pranav. We'll come to that. But before going there, there's already have been a positive impact of this, that earlier we had a limitation of number of instances that we can run in parallel from the platform. Now, once we explained our use model to AWS, they have increased the limit so that right now, I mean, like the number of instances for this one course, like 400 plus students, is not a problem for us. And they have done this for our case, right? And they do it case to case basis. And we presented a strong use case that these many students of IIT Kharagpur are using your platform, and we need this kind of a support. So they agreed and they increased the this thing, right? The threshold of that. So it's going in a positive direction. We can completely understand your frustration with this thing. I mean, like believe us that we are also getting very relevant points which will make the system very, very much smoother than you are currently facing. Right. So thank you all for your feedback. Now coming to Shivam's point, that one additional problem is that the data set was not loaded properly in the first assignment. First, in the sense, in the KNN.
Yeah, I guess.
Shivam, can you speak up?
Yes, yes. So in the KNN assignment, so the target variable column was not there when we loaded. Only the feature variables were loaded for some reason.
Okay, so was the is the target variable not present?
Yes. So the thing was that yeah, sorry to interrupt. So what the thing was that the users that started and created the notebook there and then on the last meeting we had. So that notebook that they received was an older version, in which that particular code line was missing, in which the code line basically deals with the importing and ingesting that particular target variable into a data frame. But onto the the updated notebook that Advai sir shared with all of the students, that problem was solved. And I also asked the students that if they are having any sort of discrepancy in sort of in related to the code, they should, like, for the time being, resort out to that particular notebook that sir has shared, because it consisted of the latest code and yeah, the fix for the problem that Shivam was probably facing.
Okay, so Saurabh, subsequently we need to update this in our original
Yes, sir.
chart.
It has been updated into
Right.
the system. But the thing is that Shivam might have like created that notebook an earlier point in
Earlier.
time.
Right.
Yeah.
So Shivam, this is fixed for new users. For you, since you started with a problematic this thing that we had started in the beginning, so that problem remained for you, but subsequent users will not have it. So that way, it is kind of fixed now.
Okay.
But for you, like travel will go only if you take the latest notebook. Pranav has a point. An issue pertaining to assignment 2 feature selection, submitting values with decimal point gives failed submission. Otherwise, integer values are accepted but with incorrect results. I think this also relates to the continuity.
It relates to basically for the system, the evaluation scripts currently being not so tolerant because they are basically looking for a set data structure onto the backend. So this is the point that I have covered onto the resolution, second last point, that making the evaluation scripts more agile and tolerant. With what this basically means is that if there is an expectation of a particular data type, be it integer or a string or a float, then it would be specifically mentioned onto the cell that you are performing, onto the question cell on the Jupyter notebook. Else, if it is not mentioned, then like regardless of whether it is an integer or it is a float, it will be valued correct.
That would be right thing. So if the answer is expected to be in a binary or a discrete number, we have to mention that. If the answer is not expected to be discrete number, nothing required to be mentioned. But in that case, our evaluation script should produce continuous domain results, not binary results. So Advait, this is one very important point for our subsequent evaluations, right? So I guess for subsequent assignments also, we have to take care, we have to look into the evaluation script, revisit the evaluation scripts and see whether this property is kind of taken care there. Otherwise, there is a feeling because the evaluation script is not seen by the students, they have a feeling that it is like giving very binary results where accuracy is coming, but the answers are expected accuracy is coming, but the answers are showing wrong.
Right. So, like I think one teaching assistant has actually already been assigned to look after these evaluation scripts.
Okay.
So I think Ashmita Nandi. So I think we'll have a meeting separately with her maybe in the weekend.
Right.
So then,
right.
so that
if the students are the students being given some assignment from those parts right now, or they will wait after this for this correctness of the evaluation and this thing.
So as of now, they have been told that those who are having any kind of issues can just mail their completed answer sheets to us. We will manually evaluate. So once this issue is resolved, then we'll go back to the automated evaluation.
Right. All right. So anything that is not discussed from the students? Can you raise any point that you have that is not discussed?
Sir?
Yes. Go ahead, please. Shivam, go ahead.
Sir, when I started solving the notebook, one issue that I faced was that some of the variable names were not proper because somewhere it was written check prediction with a capital P and somewhere it was written check prediction with a small p, and that was raising a lot of errors. So it would be great if the TAs like solve the assignment or just run the script once with all the filled answers and check if the script is all right and then like upload it in the platform.
Yes, completely agree with you, Shivam. This should be run by someone to see the correctness of the problems and then only make it available in the platform. Absolutely. Okay, so all right, then we are on to it. Very, very, very thank you for the very nice and kind of detailed feedbacks. We'll definitely improve and get back to you with a better platform to handle.
Okay, thank you, Saurav and Saurashishta. So now I think we can continue to the. So if there are no further issues to be discussed in this matter, then we can move on to our next agenda, which is to discuss the next assignment, right? So three assignments have already been given. The first one was k nearest neighbor. Second one was on feature selection. Third was linear regression. So for first and second assignments, the deadline was today. I mean today till end of today. And for so those who are not able to submit through AI Shiksha, you have already received a mail about what to do. So please do it accordingly. And for the third assignment on linear regression, the deadline is next Wednesday. Meanwhile, today two more assignments are going to be given. One is related to decision tree and the other one is related to regularized regression, which we discussed in the like earlier this week, lasso and ridge regression. Right. So, so who are the TAs to who will be giving the demo today?
Good afternoon, sir. So this is Raj. So could you please make me present?
Yes, I'm. Yes, Raj. I'm making you the presenter. Just a minute. I made you a presenter, Raj Kishan.
Yes, sir. Okay. So should I start now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I hope everybody can see my screen.
Sadbhai, can you drop now?
Yes, Saurashishta and Saurabh, you can drop now. Thank you. Thanks for your presentation.
Thank you.
So is my screen visible?
Yes.
Okay. So hi everybody.
Please make it larger. Please make it larger. Yeah. Now it's better. Yes. Carry on.
Okay. So hi everybody. This is Raj, one of the TAs. So I will be discussing about regularized regression in this session. So this will be a very small, like in 10 minutes, this is going to be finished. So this is based on your assignment on regularized regression. So whatever you learn here, like if you are like familiar with these things, then you can easily do the assignment. So say in this notebook, first I am going to import the basic modules, the pandas and numpy and pyplot. Okay. And then I am also importing train test split. So this I hope you have already done in the previous assignment, which is the linear regression. Now also we will add some more modules. So from sklearn.linear model, we import lasso, ridge and linear regression. So as the name suggests, linear regression will be used for the linear regression model, ridge for the ridge regression and lasso for the lasso regression. Now here what we are importing as the dataset is the Boston dataset. So basically this Boston housing dataset is the one which will be also used in the assignment. So from sklearn.datasets import load Boston and then a variable Boston which is equal to load Boston. So basically in this Boston you will have the data. So if we print this Boston, you can see that it has different keys. One of them is the data. Now what this data has is it has different feature values and different data according to the feature values, which we will be seeing in a minute. The second key is the target. So basically these are the output values which should be given. The third one is the feature names. So these are different names given to different input features. So for this data we will see that it is like it has multiple columns and each column corresponds to one of these names. Okay. And then we have this description where it is written what this all data set is about, which will not be required in our case. Now Okay, so first of all, what we are doing with this data, so this Boston has all this data, target, etc., these values, right? Now, what we will do is we will create another data frame. So a data frame can be thought of basically as a table, okay? So it will have different columns and rows, and corresponding to that, we will store different values. So Boston DF is equals to PD pandas dot data frame. So this is the Boston data. So basically all the values which are in this data key, which we saw earlier, they will be put here. And the column names will be used are the feature names. So we also saw that a key named feature names where all the names are given. So these will be the column names and the values will be these Boston data. Okay. Now also we will create another column which is called target. So in Boston DF, we are putting these input features and their corresponding column names, right? But we don't have the output. So in one column, we are also targeting to put the output values. So we create another column called target, and there we put pd.dataframe Boston target. So we already saw that it had a key called target. It has a key called target, and in target there are different values which are the output values required. Now these values will be used and the name given will be target. Okay. And now we print Boston DF. So basically Boston DF is a data frame, and we can see that these values are printed here. So you can see that here in the top row, we have different column names. So CRIM, ZN, Indus, CAS, etc. And the last one is the target. So this is the output value required. All the other columns except the output is the input features that are being fed to the model. Now it has 0 to 505, so a total of 506 rows and 14 columns. So 13 of these columns are the input features and the 14th one is the output. Okay, so now with this data frame Boston DF, we can do different stuffs, like for example here I'm showing you how we can create the mean. So basically Boston DF dot mean, if we write this, then it will show us the mean corresponding to the different columns. Okay, so if I write Boston DF dot mean, then the first column is CRIM. So it will take all the values corresponding to CRIM and it will print the average value of that, or the mean value of that. Okay. Similarly, it will create the mean values for all the different columns. Now we can also write something like Boston DF dot mean, and here in the argument we can write axis equals to 0. So if we run this, this will be the same thing. Now the reason for the same results are that this basically, if we don't write anything, it just takes the axis as 0 by default. So this will be averaging all the columns. So the first column will be like the first column mean will be this, the second column mean will be this, and etc. Now on the other hand, if I was using Boston DF dot mean and the axis is equals to 1 and run this, so then it will create these means according to the rows. So basically it will take the first row and take these values, all the values in the first row, and take the mean of that and like show the mean. So it will do it for all the rows here. Okay. Okay. So next is we can also plot these different like histograms. So the first column was the CRIM column, and what I'm doing here is from the Boston DF data frame, I am creating a histogram where the column is CRIM. So basically it is only taking the values corresponding to the CRIM column and then plotting the histogram. And I have put the bins as 10. So bins are basically how many like how many bars are there. Okay, so if you write 20, there will be more number of bars here. So if I run this, you can see that in CRIM, most of the values are between 0 to say 9 or so. All of like most of the values are there, and some values are more than that. Okay, so if we see the this Boston DF values, then we can see that like most of the values are less than even 1. So basically this CRIM IM has most of the values in this first bin, right? So if we change the bins here, we can see that only 5 bins are there, or 5 bars are there. Okay. So similarly, you can put different column names and see that different like histograms will be printed out according to that. And also one more thing is that we can just remove these all and then try to run it. So what will happen is we will get the histogram of all the columns. Now by default the bin number of bins is 10. So here in all the cases we are having 10 bins. So this is also doable. Okay. Next, now we'll be putting this. Yeah.
Sir, what would happen if one of the feature is like a discrete variable or a categorical variable?
And it will just like treat them as continuous, right?
So would it make, how would it make a histogram of that?
Well, it will just.
What if?
Yeah.
Sir, what
Yeah,
if
go on.
that some of the features are say categorical and some are like continuous features? So would it like automatically make the histogram or the bar plots, or do we have to specify?
Yeah, so I think here we are putting this hist. So basically it is putting this histogram. If we have to put bar graph, maybe we will have to do it by hand. Like I haven't tried that. So I will leave it as an exercise for you to do that. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so next, so we had the data in a table format. So now if you see the assignment, you will see something like this. So basically we are first dividing it into the input features and the output values. So X are the input features and Y is the output, which is has to be like output by the model. And so what we do here is we had, so what is this Boston features names? This Boston feature names I will show you just. So these are the values. It is an array containing all the names of the features, right? So what is this Boston feature names? It is the names of all of the features in the form of an array. So if we write it like this, what it will do is the X will contain only those columns of Boston DF which columns have the names which are suggested by this Boston features names. So basically these names will be taken and only those corresponding columns from Boston DF will be put in X. So here in the names we were having the features names. So only the features will be stored in the X. Okay. Similarly, we can write something like y equals to Boston DF dot target. Now this target was say, so these were the different names, right? So if we write dot target, then this target values will be put in Y. Okay. So writing in this way puts only this particular column in this Y variable. And if we have an array, then all those columns will be put. So in X, we have different features, 13 number of features. Now, so we convert it into an NP like NumPy array. So train X is basically this which has the different input features, and train Y is the outputs which are to be given. Now I can write something like X train X test, Y train Y test equals to train test split, train X, train Y, test size 0.2 and random state equals to 10. So I will go through each of them. So basically by train test split, what we are doing is we are splitting the train X and train Y values into two different sets. One set is the training and the other one is the testing. Okay. So in that X train and X test, we are putting like we are splitting this train X values. And in the Y train and Y test, we are splitting these train Y values. Okay. Now the Now, what is this test size? So by writing test size equals to 0.2, I mentioned that 20% or 0.2 fraction of all the values should be in the test. The other one should be in the training. So 80% of the data will be in the training set and 20% will be in the testing set. So X train has 80% of this train X, okay, and X test has 20% of this train X. Similarly, Y train will have 20% of this train Y. I'm sorry, 80%. Y train will have 80% of this train Y, and Y test will have 20% of this train Y. What is this random state? So basically, if you assign some a particular integer value to this random state, then whenever you split, like write this train test split, it will split it in the same way. So if you specify like 100, the splitting will be different. But whenever you repeatedly put 100 in that, the splitting will be in the same sense. So in the assignment, you will see that you will have to use a particular like random state here, because like by default it should be automatic. So in automatic evaluation, it will evaluate based on that specific random state. So it is defined in the your assignment. Okay. So this is what. So you will have to use a different random state. Now if we like, we can print X train, X test, Y train, Y test, etc. Yeah.
So can't we use directly X and Y in the train test split?
Like you can do it in various ways, right? I'm only showing one of the ways. In fact, like you will see that most of the functions I am using, they are very, very basic, right? So you can try different approaches. There is no problem with that.
So could you repeat once again what is random state for?
Okay, so basically, if you assign one random say I have in this train X, I have the numbers 1 to 10. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, if I put a test size of 0.1, then one of those 10 numbers will be in the testing, right? The other one will be in the training. Now, which one will be in the testing? I don't know. It can be the number 1, it can be the number 5, etc. Now, if I put a random state of 10 and run this script again and again, I will have the same number in the testing set. I can put some number like 20 and then I will have a different value put into the testing set. So it randomly picks up, right? It splits randomly. So if you have 100 different samples, it will randomly pick 20% of them. So which ones it picks is defined by this one. So you can also put this empty in real life scenario. So in your assignment, you have to put it in particular number so that the automatic evaluation can evaluate it properly. But other than that, yeah, like you can use different numbers here. Okay. So is that clear?
What does the number signify actually, sir? Like random number, random state 10, random state 3?
Yeah, so it's just like a random seed. So basically, when you are generating random numbers, you have to put a seed, right? So if you put the seed as 1 and then generate the number again and again, like you put the random seed as 1, generate the random number, then put the random seed again as 1, generate the random number, you will have the same random number. Why? Because it is using the same random seed.
Okay, so a particular random state fixes the way of the splitting.
Yeah, exactly. So which random numbers will be used for the train and testing, like splitting, it is defined in this way. Okay, great. So let's move on. So this linear regression you have already done in the previous assignment. So here I am like specifying line reg equals to linear regression dot fit X train and Y train. So basically I am taking the input features, only the training, like it was split into training and testing sets, right? So I'm training on, like I'm taking only the training part. Similarly for Y also I'm taking the training part and I am trying to fit my like linear regression model onto that, right? Now after fitting, we can like see the different coefficients. So what are the coefficients? The W values. So we can see different W values by using this like using this syntax. Similarly, we can also see the intercept. So the coefficients will be a set of numbers because there are different W values, and the intercept will be one scalar value because there are only there is only one intercept, right? There is only one B. So it will be shown by this syntax. Now we can also, like, after it is fit to the training set, we can also predict with respect to the testing. So here in linereg.predict, I am putting the xtext test as argument, and then it predicts all the different output values. Okay, so this is just an array having different output values. Now using this, you can like do different kinds of things like mean square error, etc., etc. So this was about linear regression, which you have already done in the previous assignment. Now similarly, we can also write something like ridgereg is, so it is basically defining, yeah, someone has to say something. Okay, so with ridgereg, what we are defining is that it will be a ridge regression model with an alpha of 0.1. Basically what this alpha is nothing but the lambda value. So we have different lambda values, and corresponding to that we have different like calculations for the like fitting, right? So here we put the alpha, basically the lambda value of 0.1. So this model, and then we can try to fit it respect to these training samples, just like the previously done linear regression. So only one thing will change, this alpha value will be added. So you can try different alpha values. Here I have tried 0.1, and then first I fit it. Then similarly, I can see the coefficients and intercepts in this model also, and I can also predict the output values given the testing input features. Okay. Now, like lasso regression is the same thing. So basically, you are defining this lasso, and then you are putting an alpha, lambda value. So this can be anything. I have put 0.1. Then I have fit it, and then you can print these different things, and also you can predict. So that's it for this session. So I will close, and I will, like, now Anjali will be telling you about the other assignment. Okay, so I will just stop sharing my screen.
Is my screen visible?
Yes, it's visible.
Okay, then now we will see now we'll see the decision tree. Kindly mute yourself. So now we will see decision trees. So decision trees are very common and powerful prediction approach and is easily interpretable. So more complex ensemble approaches which you will learn in the coming time in machine learning course, such as random forest.
Anjali,
yes, sir.
Anjali, please zoom in. We can't see it. It's not legible.
Is it okay now?
Yes, it is okay. It is okay. You can make it slightly more larger. Fine, I think fine. Carry on.
Okay, so many ensemble learning approaches such as random forest, which you will be learning in the due time for this course, they are built on top of the decision trees only. So we'll now learn how to implement these decision trees classifier and regressor using the scikit-learn library. So here our basic goal will be to create a model that predicts the value of a target variable by learning decision rules that is inferred from the data features. So let us now begin with it. So for that, first we import the necessary libraries. So we have used the pandas library here to read a CSV file. And then from sklearn.tree, we import the decision tree classifier And then from the model selection, we import the train test split to split our data set into the into training and testing. Then from sklearn we import the metrics on the base which we will use to evaluate our accuracy score and the confusion matrix. So then we import the data set. The data set here, the data set that we are using here is the Wine data set. It has 178 rows and 14 columns. So in order to view the columns, we can use data.columns. So these are the columns available to us. Now from these 14 columns, we will use the first 13 columns as a feature attribute. And this the last column, that is the 14th column, we will be using it as a label or the target attribute. So we define the feature column and the label attribute for our data. Now, once this is defined, we then further split our given data into training and testing set. So we keep 80:20 ratio for our training and testing size. And then using the decision tree classifier, using decision tree classifier and .fit method, we train our model. And once the model is trained, we can predict using the predict function. And as already we have imported the accuracy metrics from sklearn, and then using these metrics, we can calculate our accuracy score. And then, as already said, using metrics, we can
here the random state is not very stated.
Sorry?
Here the random state is not given.
Because I have not used it. That is why the accuracy earlier you would have seen that it was 0.88 something, and now it is 0.91 because I have not used the random state. I have not defined the random state here, so it has changed. If you use it, it's better. It will give the same result over the time. I have not used it here. You can use it in your assignments.
Yes, like for our assignment evaluation purpose, it has to be mentioned, na? A random state.
Yes, you have to mention it.
Okay.
Okay, then we printed this confusion matrix. We can see this is a 3x3 confusion matrix because in this is for this classification thing we had three labels. We have seen here from the label.customer segment there are three classification there are three labels 1, 2, and 3. That is why it is a 3x3 confusion matrix. Then in order to visualize this decision tree, we import the GraphVis library. So you can visualize this decision tree using the GraphVis library. Okay, now earlier you would have seen when using the decision tree classifier, I have mentioned the criteria as entropy. When you don't mention explicitly as entropy as the splitting criteria, the decision tree classifier takes the Gini index as the default splitting criteria. So here it will classify on the basis of Gini index. So again, we have got the accuracy here, confusion matrix, and this is our the visualization of our decision tree. The next is the decision tree regressor. We have seen decision tree classifier. Now next is decision tree regressor. So from again we have imported. Raj already talked about the Boston data set. So we are using the same data set for the decision tree regressor. And then from sklearn.tree we are importing the decision tree regressor. Similarly, as we did for the classifier thing, we train the data, fit the data, and then we predict it to get our accuracy. Similarly, we can also visualize our decision tree regressor. So in order to get a more detailed view, you can visit these websites. So that's all from my side. If you have any queries, you can ask.
The MSE means
mean squared error.
Mean squared error.
Okay,
That's taken as the criteria.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention here is, you can see I have mentioned the criteria as MSE here. Okay, decision tree regressor can take other criteria also, such as mean absolute error. So for that you have to write MAE, and by default MSE is the splitting criteria here. Even if you don't mention the criterion as MSE, it will split according to MSE only. That is the default criteria for decision tree regressor. Is that okay with all of you? Should I stop sharing? Okay, that was all from my side.
Okay, Anjali. So Advait sir has told us to stop the meeting. So today's session is finished. So everybody can leave now. If anyone has any questions, then they can ask. Otherwise, the session is finished.
Hello, sir, are you there?
Yeah.
Sir, I had a question. What all assignments do we have to submit in the next lab, until next Wednesday?
So I think you have to submit these two. So this module 3 programming part and module 6 programming part, which are regularized regression and decision trees.
Okay, so linear regression that which was given last time.
So yeah, so linear regression you have to like submit also.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. So
Yeah.
there are
So
three, right?
yeah, so you will also get an official mail regarding the deadline.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so there will be 3 assignments you have to submit the next before the next lab. Okay.
Yes, sir. Fine.